Thanks everyone, and welcome to the Burrito Bison Postmortem, a challenge of designing for 2 markets at once. My name is Dominique LEMIRE-NAULT, co-founder of Juicy Bee Studio.
And I'm Yowan LANGLAIS, the other co-founder.
So first of all, I just want to say that we both are from Quebec, Canada, and we are French guys, so I hope our English is not going to be too terrible for you. So yeah, with that said, let's talk about some information about us, the Juicy Beast. We are a 2-year-old studio based near Montreal in Quebec, Canada. The company is composed of 4 dudes working hard in the basement. First of all, there's Jean-Philippe Côté, the guy to the right in this picture. He is our main illustrator animator. Basically, every single visual thing you can see in our games are created by this guy. To the left, we have Alexander Dalzey-Hill, our mighty programmer. He's coding almost every single thing in our games. As for Yowan and myself, we are pretty much doing the rest. The business management, the team management, the core game designs, and stuff like that. But to be more game specific, I work on the game's balancing, the game's progression, and the level design. As for Yowan, he's more on the social strategies, the game's interfaces, and the art direction with Jean-Philippe. So we all graduated in multimedia integration, and except for GP, who graduated in 2D animation. So that means when we started Juicy Beast, we hadn't much experience in the video game industry, but since then we have learned a lot of things and keep doing so. So here's what we've done so far. First of all, we have the mighty Gobtron. It is a defend your castle kind of game in which you defend yourself using your body fluids from little attackers. We know it's kind of gross, but it was our first game, and Gobtron is kind of cute, so I guess it's alright. The next one is Tail and Pika. It's an adventure puzzle platform game in which your chicken has been stolen by the evil Coyote clan, except your magic hand Pika. So in that game, you grab your gun and learn how to control Pika to bring back your chickens. The next one is Feed the King. It's a stacking high score based game in which you stack cakes as high as possible and then control the king as he eats them all up. The next one is, of course, Burrito Bison. I'm not going to talk about that one right now since this is the core of our presentation. So yeah, let's step to the next one. It's Bloom Defender, our upcoming game. It's a tower defense game in which you grow up defensive trees and cast powerful spell to protect your mother tree from elemental spirits. So that's basically it for now. We'll keep bringing new games pretty soon. So I'll let you on.
Yeah, thanks, Dominic. All the games we've just seen there are all made with Flash, and that's because we only have the knowledge to develop in Flash for the moment. But we've always had a big interest in the iOS market. So as a Flash developer, a little while ago, we had the idea to design a Flash game that would obviously do well in the Flash market, but at the same time be a good fit for the iOS market. The idea was really to design only once and to generate revenues from 2 different markets at the same time, because yeah, you can often find games being ported from more hardcore platforms like PlayStation 3 or Xbox to the iOS market, but the ending results are usually pretty different from the original game because obviously they need to be adapted. So that's what we tried not to do. We tried to skip the redesign part of the game and go straight to the release part. So I don't know if everybody here with.
How many of you, just for fun, have played Burrito Bison yet? Not bad, not bad. Yep. Yeah, here's a quick trailer of it. Yeah.
is it?
Okay, so yeah, the trailer isn't really obvious itself. So what's the gameplay exactly? Is you control a big Mexican wrestler, and your goal is to launch yourself from a wrestling ring to try to reach and break through the giant door which keeps you trapped in Candyland, which is the place you've been kidnapped to by evil gummy bears. So you try to launch yourself as far as possible from the launching ring, and you bounce and smash escaping gummy bears to steal their money, which money you will use to buy some upgrades and new abilities. And the more upgrades you get, the further you'll be able to go, and eventually you'll break through the last giant door and beat the game. Awkward.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk about the beginning of Burrito Bison. So at the very beginning, Burrito Bison was a game based on the run and jump genre. It's kind of like Cannibal, Robot Unicorn Attack, or Monster Dash. In this type of game, what you do is basically try to survive as long as possible. Your character is running faster and faster, and the only thing you can do is jump. So, and because we had just finished Feed the King, the short high score based game, we decided to make something with more depth and content. So that's why, after many weird and unsatisfying attempts at making a run and jump game, we ended up turning genre to the tossing or launching one. It's kind of like a toss the turtle, penguin swing, or berserk ball. So yeah, in this type of game, what you do is basically launch something as far as you can. There's not much thing to do after the launching minigame, except to see how far you will go and launch again and try to beat your own score or stuff like that. So basically, we went from that, a heavy metal guy running in a heavy metal world, kind of like brutal Legion, and we went to that big beefy masked Mexican wrestler bouncing on gummy bears and breaking through giant doors. So of course there's a lot more to the prototyping process of Burrito Bison, but for now let's talk about its development.
So yeah, like we said, we wanted to design the game only once and publish it on 2 different markets at the same time. For that, we had to make sure the game was meeting expectations for each markets, but still deliver a solid and good gameplay in the end. So yeah, it's not that we know everything, but we've played a lot of Flash and iPhone games ourselves, so we have a pretty decent idea of what makes a game maybe more successful and what doesn't. So we tried to came up with a list of recurring features across multiple successful games, both on iOS or the Flash market. And the idea was to try to define which features our game needed to have in order to be at least a minimum successful on each markets. So yeah, so let's see what we get with that list.
First of all, there's lots of upgrades. So yeah, if you want a successful Flash game, you're gonna need a shop with lots of upgrades in it. So that's why in Burrito Bison, there's a bunch of stuff for you to upgrade as you play through the game. There's not a ton of abilities, but considering the fact that you can upgrade these like 5 times each, we ended up having like 50 upgrades overall. Updates are a very important aspect of the game. They drive the player to keep playing the game as they want to upgrade everything to the max and see how powerful they will become in the end. So after that, what you want is a strong feeling of progression. This one is closely related to the upgrade system. The way it works is that your player has to see that he's come a long way since he started playing the game, that he's way more powerful, stronger, and faster than he was at the beginning. That's why in Burrito Bison, after a couple of launches from the ring, you usually get enough cash to upgrade something. And once you did, you can see that you're doing a lot better than your previous launches. So that feeling in Burrito Bison is pretty crucial. This is why you keep clicking the retry button, because you want to go further, you want to see what's next, what's beyond those giant doors. So basically, without upgrades, there's no feeling of progression, and the game gets boring pretty fast. So yeah, without upgrades, Burrito Bison would have been a classic high-score based game, where you keep doing the same thing over and over again just to beat your own high score, and well, long term, it would have get pretty boring.
And the other feature we've identified was short play sessions. When we first noticed that Burrito Bison was switching from the run and jump gameplay to the launching or tossing gameplay, we knew we wanted to make something pretty different from the other games in the genre. What you can often find in those games is that you can throw your character for a very long period of time without doing anything, so you can let the game play itself and as you do something else. And we thought it was a bit boring, but mainly didn't really fit the short play sessions you often find on mobile games. So what we decided to do was to make sure that every launch you do from the ring doesn't last very long. So that way, if you only have a couple minutes to play, and you can easily launch yourself just a couple times and still quit the game with no problems. And the next point is simple and responsive controls. We really wanted the game to be super simple, but we wanted to have even more simple controls. So many times during the prototyping process, we came up with features that would require additional buttons. But we kept striking these ideas down because the ultimate simplicity for us really was to have a single button. What we think was cool with having, especially on the iPhone, with having only a single button, is that you end up having no buttons at all on the screen. You can let players touch anywhere they want on the screen, and it still works. So no need to display any physical buttons. And even though we've had a single button to press throughout the game, we still needed to explain players how and when to press that button. We also had to explain what was the general goal of the game and how to achieve it. So instead of packing all that information at the beginning of the game in a long or boring tutorial, we went with a more lightweight approach. What the game does is that it only tells you what you need to do when you need to do it. So for instance, you will be taught the purpose of the giant doors only when you hit one for the first time. So what we like about this method is players can jump right into the game without having to worry about learning or memorizing the tutorial for later on. They will only have to memorize small doses of information over a longer period of time, which is pretty cool. And last point in the list is an easy-to-use user interface. That might sound pretty obvious, but as a Flash developer, we're used to make buttons the size of a mouse. So we could have done a typical PC user interface for the Flash release, but we would have needed to redesign the whole thing for an eventual iOS release, and that's what we're trying not to do. So we just had to make sure that buttons were big enough to be touched on an iPhone screen, for instance. That ended up being a bit of a challenge, especially for the shop page, because we wanted the shop to be pretty light and simple, but have as much information displayed at the same time as possible. So, and we didn't want any, if possible, any collapsible menus players would have to go through to find information. So, as the UI designer myself, I just had to make sure I keep testing all my mockups by sending myself emails on with screenshots in it on my iPod, and just run around the office asking the guys how they felt with the size of the buttons and the size of the text. So, but it went pretty well. We decided to release the Flash version with the iOS user interface in it, and everything went pretty right. So we're pleased with the results. So that's pretty much it for the list of features. You now know how we managed to fit Burrito Bison into that list of features. But one thing though is that we didn't really wrote the list down before we started developing and then just check the boxes as we go. We did it more instinctively instead. So yeah, I guess you could write the list for your own projects, but it also depends on the kind of game you're making. That was a good list for the type of game we were trying to make. So I guess you could easily aim at a different, maybe more hardcore audience, even on the iOS market, and you would end up with a pretty different list if you would like to do the same exercise. So yeah.
Now let's talk about Flash for iOS sake. So why do we build our game in Flash first? Well, it's because they mainly serve as test. Releasing them in Flash allows us to see if players actually like our game, because if they don't, they're gonna rate it down and they're gonna talk about it somewhere. So that is why we like to read comments of our games. We can see what's wrong in them, what's not working, what players want to see in them, what's currently missing. So with that, we can fix flaws before making the iOS version of it. And we can also write down good ideas for potential updates on the iOS site. So yeah, with that strategy, we make sure the game is at its best when the iOS version comes. So yeah, let's talk about some statistics of Burrito Bison. So far, we have 10 million views with 5 million new games created and an average playtime per session of 45 minutes. What these stats show is that the average player played through the game in only one session, because we know it takes around like an hour to complete the game, and that he has come back at least one time, because there's twice as much views as new games. So these are pretty amazing stats, and we're really proud to see that. So yeah, thanks to everyone who played the game. So the rest of the stats are pretty much just funny stuff to know, like we have 300 million launches, there's been 8,500 million Gummy Bear Crush, 2,500,000 doors broken, no, 2,500,000 doors broken, and the game is hosted by 1,850 portals. So yeah, now let's talk about the revenue breakdown of Burrito Bison. As you can see in this pie chart, most of our revenues come from the primary license. We had around $30,000 for it. As for the red part, it's what we've got from the ad and contest award earned on Congregate. That's pretty much it. We didn't sell any non-exclusive license of the game, probably because the price for it might have been a little bit too expensive. So basically, people just took the game as it was on the web and put it into their portal, which is kind of sad for us, but well, at least we keep learning, so I guess that's the good part.
Okay, so yeah, what went wrong with the game? Actually, not much. The worst part, we think, was the prototyping process of the game, which is the blue part in the chart. Yeah, the game is born from a very long prototyping process, and the reason for that is probably because we tend to try to make things different and add interesting twists to our games. So we end up prototyping for a very long period of time, compared to the red part, which is the actual game development process. Yeah, on top of that, you could add the polishing time process, which is the green part. That alone isn't much of a problem itself, but once you add it to the long prototyping process, it ended up being pretty long and expensive compared to the revenues we generated from the primary license. So yeah, that's pretty much what went wrong. The core development of the game went pretty right, and nothing to complain about. That's right. Okay, so yeah, what went right? Basically everything else. But especially the two same points that went wrong kind of went right in some way. We prototyped for a very long period of time, which was pretty expensive, but in the end it was worth it because we're pretty pleased with the final results. And we don't think we would have come up with the exact same gameplay if we would have started from a launching or tossing game right from the start. We're also happy with the look of the game. We know we tend to polish too much our games, but we're always happy with the results. So that was a good part. And yeah, I think that's it. So thank you. And if you have some questions, I think we have some time left.
Yep.
I don't know how much time. 2 questions?
Time for 2 questions.
Anybody?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi guys. Is this on? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'll just talk loudly. Hi, I'm Ryan Creighton from Untitled Entertainment. Thanks for your presentation. I wondered, the big news is about in-app purchases on iOS. You can't do those currently when you use Flash to deploy to iOS. So what's your strategy for dealing with that issue?
You mean in-app purchases?
Yeah. Because I mean, this lends itself really well to IFP with upgrades.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the game isn't really, we're not planning to play right now with the in-app purchases for the first versions. So we'll just port the game as it is, and we'll evaluate what's the response from that, and just tweak the game according to the feedback we get. So we didn't really think about the in-app purchases for the initial port. If that was your question.
So you haven't launched on iOS yet?
No, not yet. The game is still in development right now.
So we are starting the iOS. We're going to see with this release, and we're going to learn from the next.
Should be ready in a couple months.